can't get enough of Fire Emblem? Are 35 years worth of games not enough to satisfy your needs? Then I have some good news for you, because as it turns out, you can now also get Fire Emblem in games that aren't Fire Emblem at all. Some are minor inclusions, some are so big they've caused their fanbase to clamor for less Fire Emblem content. All of that will get a spot in this video, as we take a look at the many crossovers in Fire Emblem history, including some I myself had no idea were a thing. And just so we're on the same page, I won't really be covering Tokyo Mirage Sessions or Fire Emblem Warriors here. Even though they are definitely collaborations with other series, I want to look more at crossovers that happen outside of the Fire Emblem sphere. I want to begin with the very first Fire Emblem related content that ever appeared outside of a Fire Emblem game, as well as outside of Japan. And believe it or not, that is actually not Super Smash Bros. Melee. The first time Westerners could ever officially come in contact with something from Fire Emblem was in 1996, when Kirby Superstar released for the SNES. This game is essentially a collection of all kinds of smaller games, one of which is the Great Cave Offensive. In this little game, Kirby explores a huge cave system, while looking for treasure along the way. Some of his finds include the Mask of Tutankhamun and a Christmas tree, but also items from other Nintendo properties like a Donkey Kong barrel, Koopa shell, Captain Falcon's mask and the Falchion, Marth's legendary sword. Now, in the English release of the game, Falchion was translated to simply sword, since Fire Emblem wasn't yet a thing here, but the Japanese original script leaves no doubt about it. This is the first time Fire Emblem content has ever appeared outside of Fire Emblem games. The remake of Kirby Superstar on DS, Kirby Superstar Ultra, removes all confusion and now also calls this item the Falchion outside of Japan. But alright, calling this a crossover is maybe a bit much. It's no codename Steam, the name of which can be considered false advertising since it was released on 3DS. This game was also developed by Intelligent Systems, so negotiations to get Fire Emblem characters in the game to drum up some interest were done as soon as they began. While there aren't any in the base game, the Fire Emblem Amiibo available at the time added their respective characters to the game, meaning you could add Marth, Ike, Robin and Lucina to your Steam team. Each comes equipped with the weapon they're most often portrayed with, so the Falchion, Ragnall, 11 Sword and the Parallel Falchion, and also have skills that reference Fire Emblem, like say Ether for Ike or Tactician for Robin. It didn't stop Codename Steam from being a huge failure with terrible sales, but one thing it introduced is still being used today, and that is Marth's voice. This was the first game to feature Marth with an English voice actor, Yuri Lowenthal, who has still been voicing him as recently as Engage. Somewhere else on the 3DS, another big crossover series saw the light of day that introduced Fire Emblem characters to worlds like Mega Man and Xenoblade. I am of course talking about Project Cross Zone 2, a massive crossover game featuring characters from Bandai Namco, Capcom, Sega and Nintendo. Chosen to represent the big N were a spoiler-sensitive Fiora from Xenoblade Chronicles, as well as Chrom and Lucina, which just makes perfect sense, seeing as Project Cross Zone is a tactical RPG game not too dissimilar from Fire Emblem. It even relies heavily on a pair-up mechanic. Chrom and Lucina know all about that. Adult Tiki from Awakening also makes an appearance in the story of the game, as do the Risen as an enemy. I think it's time for a little grab bag of random cameo crossovers that are nowhere near as substantial as playable characters in Codename Steam or Project Cross Zone, but are still neat little things, some more bizarre than others. Scanning your Fire Emblem amiibo in Yoshi's Woolly World will make Yoshi resemble Marth, Ike, Lucina or Robin depending on what you've scanned. The 3DS release, Poochie and Yoshi's Woolly World, also adds Corrin to the list, although Yoshi refuses to go barefoot for the occasion. Scanning your amiibo in Super Mario Maker for the Wii U will unlock a costume for 8-bit Mario that's a little sprite of the 4 original Fire Emblem amiibo. The sound effects come from the original Shadow Dragon for NES, to fit with the 8-bit theme. In one of the strangest crossovers of the amiibo era, Style Savvy Fashion Forward, a fashion simulation game, allows you to summon a customer that resembles Lucina by scanning her amiibo. She will ask you to design an outfit based on her skirt, which of course looks like Lucina's. And as weird as this is, somehow this one fits Fire Emblem better than you'd think. The next Fire Emblem game could have a styling mechanic or minigame like this, and it wouldn't surprise me at all. But even before Amiibo were a thing, there were already a few crossovers that feel very Amiibo-like in spirit. Take for example the Fire Emblem costumes and weapons included in the Monster Hunter games for Wii U and 3DS. What immediately jumps out the most of these are the armor based on Chrom and Lucina, which are incredibly high quality actually, very well done. Weapons that made the jump are of course the Falchion and Parallel Falchion, as well as Nidhogg, the sacred bow that originates from sacred stones. The Fire Emblem itself also appears as a shield. For another very bizarre crossover, we have to go back a couple of generations to the days of the GameCube, back when Fire Emblem wasn't exactly in its peak years popularity-wise. And yet, when we were at arguably our lowest, it was Donkey Kong who noticed us, and gave Fire Emblem a nod in his Japan-exclusive rhythm game Donkey Konga Free. So which songs did he pick? One of the classic map tunes? Or the banger that is Together We Ride? No, the music used in the Japanese commercial of Fire Emblem The Binding Blade is available to drum along to in this game. Now, I have been a bit sneaky here, cause this is just a rendition of the main Fire Emblem theme, but still, the fact this version of it is used is highly unusual, I think that's fair to say. But at least Donkey Kong decided to give Fire Emblem a bit of the spotlight before it was cool, and before everyone wanted a piece of the pie that listens to the name Awakening. A few years later there was a new pie everyone wanted a piece of, and this one was gacha flavored. Fire Emblem Heroes is one of Nintendo's biggest mobile successes, if it isn't the biggest, and that meant it was time to cross over to some other mobile endeavors in the hopes of luring players over. Outfits based on Fire Emblem Heroes appeared in Miitomo, but the real big collaboration was done with Dragalia Lost, a now discontinued game that was an entirely original IP, the only one Nintendo ever put on mobile. This too was a gacha game where you had to summon characters to use, called Adventurers here, and over the course of its life, several Fire Emblem characters became summonable for a limited time. And unlike previous crossovers, this one barely leaned on the main series characters at all. Chrom, Marth and Tiki were eventually added along the way, but the majority of Fire Emblem adventurers were actually Heroes OCs. Alphonse, Fjorm, Peony, Veronica and Sharina were all available, while Loki and Thor would be featured in event cutscenes. Alongside the Falchion, Alphen's Volkvanger and Sharina's Fensalier were also added. Our mascot Faye also appears on a sticker. While Dragalia Lost itself has since met the end of its service, what remains are the pieces of artwork created for the game, with my favorite being this awesome recreation of the artwork for Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light. You know, I was about to wrap this video up, but I feel like I'm forgetting something. Something big, something historic, something that gave us Roy. Ah yes, Super Smash Bros., the series that has to feature in this video, but at the same time feels like a topic where you have to bite your lip a little. Since I suspect you're well aware of this game series, going through the entire Smash Bros. Series and detailing which characters are included and referenced and when would just be a massive waste of time. So instead I want to talk about the strange relationship between Fire Emblem and Smash Bros. One thing is for certain, Fire Emblem owes a lot to Smash Bros. The story of how Fire Emblem came to the West purely because Marth and Roy struck a chord is well documented, but even after that, I am willing to bet many of you people watching this video today were introduced to Fire Emblem through Smash Bros. I mean, I am one of you. I didn't have Fire Emblem games growing up, but I always thought the characters looked incredibly cool in Smash Bros, especially Ike and Brawl. That is what made me try out the series one day, and now we're here. Who knows where Fire Emblem would be today if Smash didn't exist, but I'd be very surprised if it was in a better place. Although, that thought can be hard to keep in mind when you come across another Smash fan complaining about too many Fire Emblem characters again. I know, very much beating a dead Pegasus here, but I feel like we can't talk about Fire Emblem crossovers without tackling this topic. Does Smash Bros. Have too many Fire Emblem characters? Short answer, no. There are definitely a lot. But only if you know nothing about the series in question and game development is it weird that Fire Emblem has more fighters than say Zelda or Kirby. Purely numbers based, that feels wrong. Their sales numbers are way higher consistently over the course of decades. When you look deeper into it, Fire Emblem has a constantly changing cast every single game. Zelda has 3 main characters and that's it. Kirby used to always have 3 as well, it's 4 now, but that's about it. A Smash Bros roster where Zelda has the number of playable characters it deserves, sales-wise, would lead to a ton of characters being included that really have no place being there. You can't say the same for Fire Emblem. Every single Fire Emblem character in Smash is a massively important character to at least their own game. You could argue some of those games are a little strange to be represented in Smash today, looking at you Roy, or have too much representation, like Awakening, but that is where another important factor comes in. Fire Emblem characters are most definitely the easiest to develop out of the entire roster. They hail from a game with a ton of fighting, they all have weapons, so movesets are super easy. They all have voice lines ready for use, and the majority of main characters use swords, so they can easily build off each other's animations. Which is another problem in and of itself, that all Fire Emblem characters are a tad too similar to use, but for this conversation that really shouldn't matter. Chrom is not taking time away from Waluigi being added. Chrom is infinitely easier to add than Waluigi. Chrom's only competition is no extra character at all. Either way, no matter how much Smash fans complain, I don't think we ever need to worry about Fire Emblem representation in Smash. It's widely covered Sakurai is on our side, he's a massive Fire Emblem fan, definitely more so than some other series represented in Smash. The narrative I've seen floating around that Nintendo is forcing Sakurai to include all these Fire Emblem characters is largely bogus. This man just loves Fire Emblem and they're easy characters to include. He has said in interviews that he has bought every single entry on release day and beaten most of them, and that says a lot because he's also on record saying he barely finishes game ever so he can start another. With Byleth specifically, there was apparently some involvement from higher up, but the same probably happened for Pyra, Mithra and Min Min, and somehow those don't seem to ruffle feathers in the same way. So yeah, this is a topic you could obviously fill an entire video with, and who knows, maybe I will someday, but for now I think I'll leave it here. What are your favorite Fire Emblem crossovers? And which do you hope to see in the future? Share it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on all my future Fire Emblem content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.